Hello, everyone. Welcome to this ESS BizTools webinar today, where we're going to be looking at the research and development package that we have produced at ESS BizTools to assist our subscribers, accountants, business advisors, and bookkeepers to be able to undertake consulting services with your clients for research and development. If you have any questions, can you please send them through to me, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or telephone me on 1-800-232-088. And if you are participating in this live webinar, you will be able to send me a message through the chat box if you wish today. So let's get underway, and we will look at the material that we're wanting to discuss with you. So what we have on the screen at present is the members home area, and I'm going through to research and development. And what you need to do is to download content. And the area we're concerned with is the accountant's documents. And this is the list of the documents that are included in the package for you to utilize in various aspects of giving advice on research and development. The area I want to start with is the flowcharts that we have developed to assist you and your teams in understanding the process involved with research and development. The key aspect of research and development is to ensure that your clients are maintaining the records that are necessary. And you can see that we have quite a number of forms, BAS forms, Business Advisory Services forms, to assist you to be able to show your clients the record keeping that is involved. You also have a set of this material in a white label version that you will be able to download to a client's website or into their computer if they have signed on with you for advice on research and development. So if we want to bring up a product, we can bring it up and then show it to you. So we have the planning a research and development project that hopefully you're able to see on your screen now. For today's webinar, we said the key emphasis would be looking at this as to what advice you need to give to your clients. So let's look at this situation and take into account what's been happening in Australia, or indeed the world, over the last 15 months. And that is, we've had this horrible virus, COVID-19, coronavirus. What have your clients been doing during that period? Because large numbers of Australians have had to live with working from home. Some probably found that quite attractive, especially in the big metropolitan areas without that daily travel hassle. And others have been in lockdown, mainly in Victoria and some parts of Sydney at various stages, and Brisbane, Adelaide as well. So lots of Australia has been affected by the lockdowns. Have any of your clients been tinkering with an idea that they've been developing in their sheds, in their farm sheds, or on their computer screens, trying to look at an idea to see whether it might be something worth thinking about? And in your conversation, I think you should be saying to your clients, have they developed an idea? And what can they do with it? And we'll be uploading to the website for research and development in the next few days some promotional material that you might care to use to alert your clients to the fact that we do have this research and development product available for them. The next step for the client would be to say, well, I want to get a project underway because I think this idea is worth exploring. The idea might have been raised by just one of the general team members who have said, hey, boss, why don't we do such and such? They could form a small team and undertake some preliminary investigations. They might take it to one of their more experienced employees who said, this won't work because of, but don't let that be a complete rejection. Perhaps you need to inquire a bit more, but perhaps that is the answer. It won't work for certain reasons. Or the answer might be, well, I work somewhere else and they had something like what you're talking about that they bought from Germany 5 years ago. Now, if that's the answer, your client really hasn't got much further they can go on this, because the Australian government will not fund research and development if that knowledge is already known. And this is why it's important that you talk to your clients about the characteristics that are necessary for a company to be able to claim research and development. Now, we could have gone into the paper on research and development, and this will tell us on the eligibility that the applicant has to be a company. And if the company has a turnover of under $20 million per annum, the research and development incentive rebate is calculated at 43.5% of the company's eligible research and development expenditure. And the other big prerequisite is the company must have spent more than $20,000 in the 12-month period on legitimate research and development. And they're the basic rules. And we have a paper there, 52005, which explains that. Now, at about this stage, this is the first decision signpost. There is a stop sign, stop and think, and your client needs to be thinking through whether they wish to proceed, whether this is worth recording what's going to happen. And we've now decided that they have moved ahead. They've removed that stop sign, and they've decided that they need a project coordinator. And for the first time, the terminology systematic progression of work should be in their vocab and in yours, because there is a process that companies need to undertake if they are going to be able to claim the R&D offset. And the first key activity is prior art searches or prior literature searches. And they're fancy legal type words, phrases, which relate to checking that someone else hasn't already done this. Now, where do you check? The internet's an obvious place, but libraries, but also from experts. And admittedly, your client's going to have to be careful who they ask for advice. They might be giving away some key intellectual property knowledge at that stage. So they should only be talking to people they know or they can check out. And find out from them whether they know that there's been any prior art or literature or similar products invented. And if so, where? Now, your client's not expected to be able to find out information that's confidential or find out information that's never been published. It needs to have been published. But if they're checking through the internet, which is where most of them will start, they need to print out a summary of what they found and keep it in a file, because they might be challenged to prove that they undertook this prior art searches in 3 to 4 years' time by the tax office. And if they haven't saved it, they will be in a very awkward position trying to justify that they went ahead and did a complete research and development project and perhaps spent a couple of $100,000, yet they hadn't completely satisfied the requirement for ensuring there was no prior art, and there could well be. So if they have satisfied themselves and got some input from experts, whether they're university academics or experts in their particular trade or professional business, please insist to them that they keep a proper file record of that, so that it's obvious that there's been some documentation of prior art literature. And we have a form, BAS 5514, which will facilitate the recording of the checking that they did on prior art. And that is very important. The business may have a research and development manager who at this stage would be getting involved. And what the legislation requires is that there needs to be a determination of what the core research and development items are. This is what the project's all about. What are they trying to prove? There must be at least one core project for any research and development claim. There can be more, but there needs to be at least one. And these links that we have to these other forms give you the documentation to complete. And one of the key things that your client needs to be recording is what's the new knowledge that they're trying to produce? And what are the core activities that are going to go with that, proving that new knowledge? And the important note there is the outcome cannot be known or determined in advance on the basis of current knowledge, information, or experience. But it can only be determined by applying a systematic progression of work. So we start with a core research and development project, and then we move into determining the hypothesis or hypotheses. It can be more than one hypothesis for each core research and development project. And this is basically proving or disproving a statement, which is going to be necessary to develop new information, new knowledge. If the process disproves something, it doesn't mean that your client cannot claim this expenditure as long as it has been documented. The Australian government, through the tax office, is happy to allow that expenditure as a claim for the research and development rebate, because the government acknowledges that Research and development is a very frustrating affair. It's nearly as frustrating as writing this material, I think. But you need to go down some dry gullies in most research activities. And they might go down a lot more than one before they come up with an answer. Your client's responsibility is to document that, so that that information, those various experimentals, which were dry runs, are all recorded, because you can claim that expenditure. The next group of people you're going to be looking for is, or asking your clients to look for, is some competent professionals. Pardon me. Competent professionals that they can approach to get their input as to what they think about this. And they may have already indicated to them, look, we know that someone in France has already done that, and they published a paper on it. And if so, your client should discontinue, go and buy the product. And any other material identified from other sources, all of that should be collected. And then before we're really spending any money, a review needs to be undertaken by some management team people. Could this knowledge that we're trying to get or be available before we started this process? And that's all recorded in the evidence of your purpose, which we have a form for. And then we've got a checklist whereby you can tick off that all this has been done. This is necessary first steps in getting a research and development product ready. Then I think it's a very good idea that you prepare a plan, or your client prepares a plan. And within our system, there is a template of a plan. Now, let me stress that under the legislation and the various rulings issued by the tax office and Oz Industry, it is not necessary for a company with a turnover under $20 million to produce a plan. But I think it's a very important factor of the credibility of your client that they have sat down and planned this. They've thought it through, because there can be a real argument that's held in a few years' time with someone from the tax office as to whether this was all part of a systematic progression of work. And I personally believe that a plan is part of that systematic progression. If your client had a turnover of over $20 million, they must prepare a plan. And the Industry Research Board chair a few years ago recommended that every company should be preparing a plan, because it's part of the intention, it's part of creating this whole structure around this project, because that's a document that would go to the board of directors for approval. As part of the development of the plan, some key considerations then need to be given by your client. How are we going to go about handling this research and development project? How are we going to do it? Can all the work be done in Australia? Or do we need to go to an overseas location to do some of the work? Now, there are strict rules for an Australian company that's claiming any expenditure overseas. First of all, you need to lodge an application for an overseas finding prior to the end of June of the year you're undertaking the work. My suggestion is you should be saying to your client, you should be submitting the overseas finding before doing any of the work. Because when the overseas finding is issued by Oz Industry and the tax office, your client will then have an assurance that that expenditure to be conducted in France to do such and such for a cost of X has been approved, has been a legitimate deduction under the research and development guidelines. Your client might also like the concept of having the total project approved before they commence. Now, this can take some time, but they can lodge a finding which covers not only overseas research activities, but also work to be conducted in Australia. Submit that to the ATO and Oz Industry. The Oz Industry's experts will go through it, and they will determine at some time whether that entire project, as specified, will be eligible research and development expenditure. But don't expect that turnaround to be done in a couple of weeks. It could be some considerable time. There's no rule that you have to apply for that approval, but you can't have it both ways. You can't be started and ask for the approval. What might happen if you've started, you might find that the review committee from Oz Industry do not approve what your client's wanting to do. So they've potentially waste some money if they've started. And then we believe you should be preparing, or your client should be preparing, a research and development budget, which gives some idea to the leadership team, but also the board of directors, what this is going to cost. Is it 20,000, 50,000, 200,000? What's it going to cost? And the key expenditure areas are internal labor, that's obviously the people on the payroll, any contracts that have to be let to other businesses, experts, and any overseas expenditure, giving the total cost estimate. And that should then be submitted to the board of directors, because the rulings from the tax office and Oz Industry make it very clear that they see that it is very important that this whole program has been properly assembled and documented by the leadership team and the team that's responsible for it, and then it is all submitted to the superior authority in the company, and that's the board of directors. And the board of directors has reviewed what has to be done and has approved the expenditure. So within the system, we have some documentation for the recording of every R&D project that the board's approved into a register, so that they're readily available. And so that if any inquiry is made by the ATO and Oz Industry at some future date, that your client can clearly demonstrate that, yes, we have implemented a systematic progression of work to undertake this overall project. So that's the start of the research and development activities. I'm just checking to see whether any of your, you've got any questions for me. I can't see any. I think there's a need for communication with your clients. One of the other things clients should also be thinking about is what sort of return on investment are they anticipating receiving from this project? Where's it all going to end up? Are they hoping to develop something that is going to cost them a couple of $100,000 that they can then utilize as the prototype to start a whole new production run and sell a few $1 million worth of this product? That thinking should also be encouraged by your clients, because research and development is still going to cost your clients 56.5% of the overall expenditure. So the clients need to be conscious that this is a very large cost impost that they are potentially getting involved in. I believe it's an area, though, that many accounting firms, small, medium-sized firms, could pay a lot more attention to, so that you can get involved with your clients, that you don't encourage clients to go off and talk to someone else, a larger accounting firm or a firm of consultants, about their research and development. Because ultimately, I find that in most cases, the original accountant loses their client. Whereas you could have kept that client and given them the trusted advisor service of helping them through this process, to helping them to finish the research and development. And from your point of view, there can be a trifecta of benefits. You will be able to render fees to your client for assisting them on the research and development journey and the lodgement of the information that has to get lodged every year with Oz Industry and the Australian Taxation Office via the tax return. But also, some of your clients who have undertaken research and development might then wish to raise money to fund the commercialisation of that research. And the government has a special program, a grant of up to $1 million on a 50% basis called Accelerating Commercialisation. If your client wishes to apply for Accelerating Commercialisation grant, invariably they will need assistance from someone like you, their accountant, their trusted advisor, to help them with the application. It's a very complicated application. It's a two-phase application, and there's significant professional fees that you can earn from assisting them in that process. But as part of the Accelerating Commercialisation funding approval, normally most applicants also secure funding for a business plan that's been prepared to assist in capital raising. So it's a bankable business plan that's been prepared. You could do that. And the third area of this trifecta is that many of your clients are still going to be short of money to exploit their invention in the marketplace. And that's why 3.5 years ago, the federal government introduced new legislation, which was amendments to the Tax Act, called early stage innovation companies. And whilst the company doesn't get any additional benefit other than getting shareholders' money from being an early stage innovation company, the investors receive two significant benefits. The first ones are given. They get a 20% tax offset on their own taxation bill based on their investment in the company with upper limits. So it's 20% of their investment. If they're a retail investor, the maximum rebate is $10,000 of their taxation bill. And if they're a sophisticated investor, the maximum rebate is $200,000 of their taxation bill, calculated at 20% of their investment. If they hold the shares for longer than 12 months, and less than 10 years, they avoid paying capital gains tax when they sell those shares. And if they still hold the shares after 10 years, the company is revalued in a calculation, and that revaluation becomes the new cost price for those shares for that investor. So that's how you can help organize your clients so that they progress through these various stages, still as your client, with you still supplying the trusted advisor service. And from your firm's point of view, you have the potential of earning significant fees in the research and development, and then the accelerating commercialization process, and then the early stage innovation company process, which has to be documented and information submitted to the ATO and to the potential investors. I think it's a win-win all round. You've got a happy client. You will have happy team members because they've been involved in some interesting work of a different standard to what they receive most days. And they will have got a real insight as to how business advisory services works. And I'm sure the partners of the firm will also be very happy because new additional fees were being created. So that's the first part of our research and development overview, looking at the real important aspect of how you are going to communicate to your clients and prospects about how research and development operates. We will continue this series in the next couple of weeks. We'll be sending out some information about when that's going to be presented. My suggestion to you at this stage is you start thinking about who of your clients might be interested in having a conversation about research and development. Some of them may not have done anything at this stage, but start letting them know that you can assist them so that they know that if they do undertake a project, that their trusted advisor accountant is able to assist them and stay with them on this journey. If you need assistance in interpretation of any of the material which we've included within this product package, please contact me and we will be able to give you some basic advice. Perhaps some of the advice will be quoted to you as an additional fee for service, or I can recommend you to someone close to you who you might need to consult with. So that's the story on the first part of this research and development journey. I hope that you found this type of webinar presentation of interest to you. And I hope that you will be able to send us any questions that you have or give me a telephone call. So thank you for your support of ESS BizTools and ESS BizGrants. Have a great day. Goodbye. And I look forward to talking to you again. In the next couple of weeks, we will be sending you the program for the next members training package relative to research and development. Goodbye.